Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today on the Divine Messages podcast. My name is Karina, and I am a psychic medium out of Calgary, Alberta. I'm back. I took a good break away from the podcast, and it's not because I didn't have anything to say, because believe me, I always have a lot to say and teach. I just found that I needed a break, and a really good break. I even decided only to see 2 or 3 clients a day instead of 4 to 5. I really wanted to be more present this past summer with my family. The whole month of June rained in Alberta, and we usually only get 2 months of warm weather. I'm a sunbum and need that heat. I'm my happiest when I'm in the sunshine, and I wanted to enjoy it more than I ever usually do here. I went to Maui in June, and since that trip, I've tried to be more present in my life. I mean, I teach people to live in the moment, but I wasn't following my own advice. And if you've listened to any of my other episodes, you would know that I'm horrible at taking care of myself. Well, maybe not horrible, as I've been really working very hard at it over the last year, but not great. And so I get caught up with everything that I sometimes don't know how to slow down. But I have really been trying to live more in the moment by being very present. I believe in living life to the fullest and living as if there were no tomorrow. Spirit has taught me that none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. We never know what our exit plan is and when that will be. And if we keep waiting for tomorrow to be happy, tomorrow may not come. I think a lot of us get so carried away with the daily grind that by the end of our day, we fail to appreciate all of the little things that happened in that day. How many of you can honestly say that you feel very present? I know so many people that cannot, myself included. So many days I fall into my bed completely exhausted, honestly not knowing where my day has even gone. I sometimes feel as if I'm in robotic mode. And this last summer has been the first summer in a very long time that I haven't worked nonstop. I normally teach a few Reiki classes and do so much, but it has felt amazing to not be so insanely busy. My children have really helped me to realize that I needed more playtime. We went boating, swimming, hung out with friends, went to escape rooms, visited with family, and more. And it was amazing to have so much time with them this summer, more time than I've had with them in years. And being honest, not having the pressure to release an episode over the last 2 months is a huge part of that. I thought about posting a little episode explaining that I wanted a little break, but I didn't even have the energy or motivation to do that. I figured that I would just come back to it when the time was right. I knew that it wasn't over, and I also knew that I was going to be guided and pushed to keep going. I just needed to slow down just a tad. And it's funny because I realized how much I missed recording. It's been over 2.5 years of working so hard at this with 86 episodes, and taking almost 2 months off has been really strange. But I believe I needed that time off just to live a little. So in August, I decided to do just that, live a little. And so I booked a weekend away in Paris. And yes, that's a far way to go for just a weekend away. But my girlfriend's a flight attendant and she was working the flight, and we figured, why not go for a fun girls' trip? So we arrived in Paris, and it was truly amazing for the first day. I was living in the moment, and I was enjoying how grateful I was to be there. And then on the second day, I was in the most incredible cathedral with my girlfriend. It was in there that I realized why I had gone back to Paris. One of my traumatic flashbacks of my childhood involved a night in Paris, and as much as I've always loved Paris, I could never shake that eerie feeling. So it was in that cathedral that I had an extremely healing moment. I knew that I was sent there to heal some old wounds, and I cried for what seemed like a good hour. And I sat there on a beautiful bench asking the higher powers why I had been chosen to be a messenger. Why had I been given such a huge responsibility to help others when I was so full of deep pain? And I questioned the universe as to when I would finally feel free. I've worked so hard and for so many years to heal. But the answer that came to me was simple. Every single person that I help will bring a little bit of peace to my soul. Those fragments that I've lost through every trauma are slowly coming back to me by being of service to others. And I walked out of that cathedral with a great sense of peace. But then when I went to check my phone, there were multiple messages from family that a family member had gone into the hospital and was in critical condition. And then the tears started to flow again. And I won't go into any details about it, as it is not my story to share. All I will say is that it literally brought me to my knees. I felt helpless being across the world and not with all of my family. I left Paris the next day and rushed to be with everyone. It has now been a few weeks since I've been back. All is well within the family and everyone is okay. So I did wish to slow down and be more present, but of course not in this way. But what I'm learning is that it's so important to make every second count. As a medium, I am fully aware that life can change at any given moment. And I'm also aware that none of us are promised tomorrow, and I preach that we must live our lives to the fullest, but when something happens, especially that's close to me, it really forces me to take my own advice, or at least try to. But will I ever learn to practice what I preach? Probably not, as sad as that sounds. I'm just so used to being the helper, the listener, and the spiritual counselor that I'm truly not left a lot of time for myself. But I'm working on it continuously, and I'm going to try my best to remember that I won't be good to anyone if I don't take care of myself first. I mean, I know this. I've talked about self-care so many times in multiple episodes, and I'm guilty of saying that I'm going to take better care of myself, and then I go back to being a workaholic. I think I throw myself into work because it keeps me so busy that I don't have time to fall back into my old ways and my old way of thinking. And so having time off away from work for a couple of weeks while spending time with a bunch of family triggered some very deep feelings again. I've fallen more times in the last year and a half than I have in many years, and I truly think a lot of it started after my father died. Just when you think you have healed and the wounds are mended, something happens that rips them wide open, and you've got to work on healing all over again. It's not pretty, it's messy, and it's downright overwhelming. I had a really good conversation with one of my very good healer friends, and she said, "You know, Karina, the reason that it's hard to be psychic is that we see everything. All the good in the world, but also all of the bad. And that creates a fear in us that most people will never understand." The other thing that she told me is that we continuously live in fight or flight mode, mainly because we have had the worst happen to us, and so we live on eggshells waiting for the next bad thing to happen. So you see, I can go into a very dark place of self-hate because I worked so hard at healing my life that when I fall, I beat myself up for allowing myself to. And when this family emergency happened, I was forced to stop all forms of work. I didn't have clients, writing, or relaxing on some beach to fall back on and keep my thoughts in check. Instead, I was forced to start feeling all emotions related to family, all emotions of my past, and all emotions of how I viewed myself. And I sat with a pen and paper many times wanting to write it all out, as I have over the past 2.5 years, and then record it, but I couldn't seem to get it out. I couldn't quite articulate the emotions that I was feeling, and for me to be silent says a lot. I just didn't know what to do with myself. But I finally sat down again, and here I am trying my best to get it all out. I'm not even sure if I'm fully making sense or not, but that is kind of how my brain works. I've been back to work now for a couple of weeks, and I think Spirit gave me enough time off to get my shit together, and I will say that I'm feeling a lot more like myself than I have in the last few months. I will always be a work in progress, but I'm also very proud of how far I have come on this journey of mine. I guess that's what life is really all about, is always just trying to be better than we were yesterday and living more so in the moment. So I want to leave you all with this today. The break that I had away from the podcast taught me that I still need to fulfill this purpose of mine on here by trying to help as many people as I can. I always hesitate to share my true feelings, but I also realize that as much as I don't want to, I have to. A true healer shares their real, raw, authentic self. I hope that you choose to stay with me on this journey of mine. I have many more new episodes coming up and some wonderful new guests coming on to share their stories with all of you. So I want to thank you all so much for joining me today on the Divine Messages podcast. It just feels so great to be back. I've missed you all, and I thank you all so much for your continuous love and support. It means the absolute world to me. If you would like to book a reading with me, I can be reached at www.divinemessages.ca or on Instagram at divinemessages333 or at the Divine Messages podcast. Please bear in mind that the perspectives and opinions represented in this podcast are based solely on the Divine Messages interpretations, We can in no way be held responsible for the actions of our followers.